the Streets, Traffic, and Refuge Committee will be called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Kotar.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley.
Here.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Here.
Chairman Boyd.
Present.
5 present, you have a quorum.
Thank you. The first board bill we're going to hear is Board Bill 218. We're going to pretty much pick up where we left off last week. Sponsored by Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Ogilvie, just give us another overview. I did get a chance to read through the permit process, which I'm fine with, so.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board Bill 218 creates a process for BPS and the Streets Department to create a permit and issue a permit for a dockless bike share operator. We talked last week about dock systems that have expanded across the country, and St. Louis being one of the largest markets in the country that does not have any type of bike share system today. Technology has kind of changed in this industry, and there's now lower or no cost options for cities that don't involve the kind of expensive hardware of the stations where the bikes go. There's a couple companies that are out there who have dockless systems that are trying to expand into markets that don't have bike share, or also enter markets where there might be bike share. So there's 2 companies or 2 operators at the same time. So this would, if there's a company out there that wants to operate here, this bill creates a legal process for them to operate. And the bill is short, but the permit itself is rather long and detailed and provides a lot of guidelines on how a company would need to operate, the fees they would pay, and there's a healthy portion, I think, of the permit that deals with equity in terms of making sure bikes are distributed into lower income neighborhoods and not just concentrated within the central corridor of the city. So BPS and the Streets Department have already written that permit. I think they're all comfortable with it. They are just waiting for this bill to sort of authorize that permit process, and then we'll hang a shingle outside and say we're open for business, and hopefully we'll have some inquiries.
Okay. We do have Ken Franklin here with Metro, and I know Metro is very interested in supporting this. And I want to ask, I don't think you signed up, but is there anything you want to say about the bill? Yes or no? Is there anything you want to say?
I will answer any questions, but I agree with what the sponsor Alderman.
Okay, I was just gonna ask you to take a seat.
Okay,
So
I didn't realize.
that's why I was asking you yes or no. You can go ahead. Go ahead and take a seat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So why don't you go ahead and further explain, why Metro is very interested in this and why it makes good business sense?
Sure. First of all, Liza, which many of you met the last committee hearing. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's been a while since I sat in the hot seat. So, as you recall, the last meeting, Liza is our resident expert. I like to call her our chief mobility officer. This bill would in fact help the region attain its goals of becoming mobility. At Bi-State, we see mobility as moving people and moving stuff, both with our transit and our freightway initiatives. And so this accomplishes that to create a total ecosystem of mobility. And we think that not only is this going to help the region, it also may be some effects and some synergies with our first and last mile to our ridership, both on the trains and the buses. Now, giving the alderman's passion for public transportation, we think this will fit in with the region's overall goals with that. From a business case, though, it really makes sense for us to connect everybody and people to everything, and this is a part of that.
Okay, thank you. Let's go around the committee, see if the committee has any questions. Alderman Murphy?
No, not today, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Kotar?
No questions.
Alderman Bosley?
No questions.
Alderman Middlebrook?
No questions?
Only question I have is, on the equity part, is there gonna be an annual report where it talks about that? I mean, you bring it up, but how do we, verify?
Yeah, so within that permit, it requires a lot of data sharing from the operator to the city. I think if we want an annual report, I'm sure we could generate that. Maybe we want to add that to the permit itself. There's still time to do that. I think it'd be a fairly short report, but I do think that's important to make sure that the operator is complying with, you know, the things they say they will do within the permit. But they'll have the data. They'll know every minute of every day where all the bikes are. And so they can provide data on rides, length of rides, you know, where the bikes start out in the morning. They can probably do it by, you know, the zip code or census tract or neighborhood or something in terms of how many rides are originating from each, you know, each little geography. So I'm going to say that shouldn't be too difficult, but if you want to lock it up and guarantee it, we can ask it to go into the permit before we issue a permit.
Okay, is there anybody want to make a motion on Board Bill 218?
I move we pass Board Bill 218 with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Second. Okay. So it's been moved and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderman Kotar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Bosley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Present. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Aye.
Five aye votes do
Thought I'd throw
pass.
you off for a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There you go.
Next board bill up is Board Bill 235, sponsored by Alderman Collins Muhammad, who just
Just
stepped out.
stepped out.
What you think you? Muhammad, you're Board Bill 235, you're recognized on that board bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board Bill 235 basically renames a portion of Margaretta Avenue after a local pastor in the 21st Ward. He has served the 21st Ward for the last 4 years as the pastor of St. Peter AME Church. And as of recently, he has opened the doors of his church to house and shelter the houseless and homeless. And he has done so without any recognition. And he actually begged me not to introduce this board bill, but I really didn't care, because I think that it is necessary to recognize him for his efforts. So I would respectfully ask and request this committee to pass out this board bill today.
And did you do a petition of the community for this? 60% required signatures?
I have, and previously I've introduced 2 board bills that rename or honorarily renames 2 streets in my ward, and I was never asked to do a petition.
Okay.
So no, I did not, Mr. Chairman.
And how many honorary street names have you done this fiscal year?
2.
2, okay. I believe that we're limited to 2 a fiscal year. And I wish I had caught this beforehand, but I just thought about it. That is the local ordinance that we cannot do more than 2 honorary street names in a fiscal year. So would you be willing to hold these to, well, actually, we don't have a choice, but to hold these until after April?
With respect,
Reintroduce them?
no, with respects to your knowledge of this system, I still need to see some type of policy or ordinance that says we cannot introduce 2 board bills.
Okay, so what we'll
Rename
do
the
is
streets.
we'll just go ahead and hold these bills until next week, and we'll get you the ordinance. Can you find that real quick for us?
Yeah, I can. I am not aware of the ordinance, but I will look.
Yeah. So we're gonna hold these. I'm pretty familiar with the ordinance since I introduced it. So, we're gonna go ahead and hold these. Sorry about that. I should have caught these earlier. So, next up is Resolution 188. And what I'll do is we'll swap roles.
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized on Resolution 188.
Thank you. Resolution 188 pertains to the operation of the Parking Division, the Parking Commission. The reason I bring this resolution up, and I think it's quite timely since we have several members on the committee that really don't understand how the Parking Commission works. We have a brand new committee member, Middlebrook. Welcome to the Streets Committee. The Parking Commission has not met since June 8th of 2017. And so therefore, as a body, the body as a whole doesn't really know what's going on in the Parking Division. Things have been happening that probably shouldn't happen, that are outside the state statutes, that are outside local ordinances. And so what I want is for the treasurer to come before us and talk about the Parking Commission, the role of the Parking Commission, what's going on in the Parking Division, and be more transparent. So this is an opportunity for that to happen. And I'm excited to know more about what's going on and what we can do to help make things better over in the Parking Division. So that's the purpose of this resolution. And I look forward to hearing from our treasurer. And she was scheduled to be here at 10 o'clock. And we did make a call. Is she coming soon?
She is.
Okay.
She is. We all thought, I apologize on behalf of the office, but we all thought it was 10.
Right.
Referring to the letter.
Right. We thought that we might have more time on these board bills previously, so. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to ask is that if we can just go out of session until the treasurer arrives, then we come back.
Let's break for about a half hour, and we'll reconvene about 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.
All right, the Streets Committee is reconvening. We've got in front of us Board Bill 188, Resolution 188, sponsored by Chairman Boyd. I want to first give out a little handout we've got here, which I think is just the statutes relating to Parking Commission, the state statutes. And I believe the treasurer's here. Thank you for being here, Treasurer Jones. Just by way of a little preamble on where we were before we went on our break, Chairman Boyd had introduced Resolution 188, which I guess addresses some issues relating to the Parking Commission. We sent, I guess the chairman sent a letter to the treasurer's office last week requesting some documents and other things. But what we're hoping for today is we've got a number of new members of the Streets Committee, just a sort of an overview of the Parking Commission, its responsibilities, and sort of, I guess, the Parking Division of the Treasurer's Office. Is that something you'd be willing to provide us, Madam Chairman, Madam Treasurer? Sure. Okay, if you wouldn't mind.
No.
No, these are reserved for committee
Oh,
members.
gotcha.
Jared, you will sit right there. You can
Thank you.
talk to her if you need.
Okay, here you go.
Okay, good morning.
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 So I want to preface this with, I want to attempt to answer all of the questions that, to the extent that I can. As you know, our office is facing a lawsuit regarding the legality of the Parking Commission and the Treasurer's Office ability to direct the Parking Division and the Office of Financial Empowerment. I'll attempt to answer questions to the extent they do not involve information protected by legal privilege or information more appropriate for legal discovery. Therefore, today we have with us, of course, my Chief of Staff and Counsel, Jared Boyd, as well as Matt Hans, our attorney in this case, is here. What do you, I'm sorry, Alderman Chairman or Vice Chairman Coder, what information in particular would you like to start with related to the Parking Commission or the Parking Division?
Certainly. I guess let's start with, could you give us just sort of a broad overview of the Parking Commission, what it is, what its responsibilities are for some of our newer committee members, please?
Okay, so the Parking Commission is under state statute because the Treasurer's Office is a county office, not a municipal office. There are 6 county offices in the city of St. Louis, 3 municipal offices. The Treasurer is a county office, therefore the laws related to the Treasurer's Office are under state law, in particular in Chapter 82 of the state statutes or revised Missouri statutes. So those statutes include information on the Parking Commission, as well as the duties of the treasurer related to the Parking Division. It's been there since 1951, and the previous treasurer went and added some things to the legislature to allow the treasurer's office to build garages. We see that has been an economic development arm of the treasurer's office. We currently have 6 garages and 2 surface lots under management or operation or owned by the treasurer's office. And the treasurer's office is also an enterprise fund, meaning that it does not, or the parking division is an enterprise fund, so it does not use any city revenues in order to operate the office. All parking fees collected go into the enterprise fund, and we use that for operations as well as paying down our debt. We are audited every year by an external auditor, KPMG. We post the total audits out on the internet for everybody to see. It's really a cure for insomnia if you ever want to read all 47 pages of each audit. And I took office in 2013. I have been operating it pretty much under the same way that it was operated previously. However, we did, clean up the office significantly. For example, the previous treasurer was accused of having ghost employees. There are no ghost employees now in the treasurer's office. We have upgraded all of our infrastructure from parking meters down to our accounting system. And now it's a much more efficient office. We have not increased any of our, we've barely increased expenses since I've taken office, as well as we've increased the amount of money we've given to the General Revenue Fund every year, and also we provide a lot of indirect services to Treasury Operations, which is the other part of the office that does investments, cash management, as well as processing payroll.
Madam Treasurer, do you know offhand, fiscal year 2017, what did you give back to the general fund? Do you know?
$1.681 million.
Okay, and do you know what you budgeted to give back to the fund this year?
No, it's a variable expense because it's based on our net income.
Right, so I guess you make those payments biannually, twice a year?
So there's a $200,000 down payment that happens at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then the balance happens at the end of the fiscal year after the audit is completed. So it doesn't happen until October.
Gotcha. Okay, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna open it up, I think, first to questions from members of the committee, and then I'll probably have a few questions. Yes.
Point of order, we submitted a letter, I believe, last Thursday in regards to the hearing requesting a recusal from Alderman Boyd based upon litigation and a conflict of interest, and didn't know if you wanted to address that issue before we proceeded.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna keep this fairly general. I certainly wouldn't want, any questions about the lawsuit and litigation, I think would be outside the purview of this committee, and that should be left to the courtroom. So if we wander into that topic area, I'll certainly bring us back into focus. Whether or not Alderman Boyd wishes to recuse himself or not, that's really not my call. That's up to him and his counsel, but I certainly have no intention of getting into litigation, any sort of attorney-client issues. No, I wouldn't put you guys in that spot. I wouldn't ask those questions, and I hope the members of the committee would respect that as well. So I'll start. Alderwoman Murphy, any questions?
Yeah, just general, how often is the parking commission supposed to meet by law or state statute or city whatever?
State statute is silent on the number of meetings that the parking commission is supposed to have. We are supposed to approve the budget every year before April. We do have that meeting. But as far as other meetings, the state statute does not say any minimum or maximum number of meetings we're supposed to have. Now, in my first year, we had a lot of parking commission meetings because obviously we were cleaning up a lot of things. And we, we revamped our entire, a lot of our processes. So and improved a lot of processes. So we wanted to make sure that everything was, obviously, that we met on all those things and we recorded all those things. In my second term, we're pretty much on autopilot at this point. A lot of the things that happened in my first administration, so we're pretty much on autopilot. All of our stuff's been improved, upgraded. We're pretty much on autopilot.
Okay. And there's no I know you wouldn't have to necessarily follow it, there's no overlying thing from the city that requests that the parking commission meet on a, monthly basis, or there's nothing like that written down anywhere?
Right, so the guiding rules in the office, or we follow state law first and generally accepted accounting principles second. So that's what we follow.
Okay. So the parking commission doesn't have to meet at all?
No, other than to approve the budget,
Okay.
no.
That's interesting. And then on the empowerment thing, which I was, in favor of when when you set up that thing, how is that going? I mean like are the people that are, the kiddos in it, are the families putting in more money? Are we getting money? I remember at the time it was stated that banks were going to put, different entities were supposed to be putting in these accounts. Is that happening? And give me just a general overview. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No.
Just about how that empowerment thing is going with those kindergarten kiddos.
Yeah, absolutely. So the College Kids Children's Savings Account program now has over 10,000 children in it from kindergarten to second grade. Families have saved over $30,000 of their own money in the accounts. Coupled with the money that we have put in, plus the money we've raised privately, is over $500,000 put aside for savings for college for over 10,000 children. Families are accessing the classes through the Office of Financial Empowerment and starting to improve their own lives. We've had families that have bought their first home, that are looking into starting out their own business, that are improving their credit, and changing their financial behaviors as well. And then also anecdotally, we found that with the credit union, we found that in the first year of us opening the accounts, families opened over 100 more accounts for either for themselves or their other children. So we're using this program as an entry point to families to change their financial behavior, and it's working. And then also, a lot of cities are starting to copy St. Louis. We have been contacted by Madison, Wisconsin, Los Angeles. Actually, we just lost our coordinator to Los Angeles to start this same program in the Los Angeles Unified School District. We've also been contacted by Atlanta and St. Paul, Minnesota, to start this program.
So the city's initial...
and I'm sorry, I didn't answer your other question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So yes, private money does go into the program. We've raised over $83,000 just for the incentive portion for college kids. We've raised over $150,000 for the Office of Financial Empowerment to provide salary and benefits for a full-time staff person. We've raised, and it's indirectly, we've offered over, 30 plus, we have over 30 plus banks and institutions and nonprofit partners who provide direct and indirect resources every time we have classes, either on site or in the community. So it's a project that everybody is, well, all these partners, it's a public-private partnership, in other words.
Okay. And the city's initial, investment is this $50.
Yes,
And then other than that, it would be you have a full-time person from the city, from your office that oversees this?
yes.
And the
yes.
rest is,
And we raise the rest privately,
Just
right?
privately or
So
whatever.
from corporate donors, from individuals, we do crowdfunding, a little bit of everything.
thank you.
I'm sorry to butt in. How much did you say you've raised privately?
A little over 83,000 for
okay.
just for college kids,
Okay.
yeah. And we're constantly raising money for college kids, so that doesn't stop.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions right now.
All right. Alderman Bosley.
I have a question about, like the general fund, just kind of how that, I have an understanding of how the funds are broken down. There are a lot of pots in the city where people have, well, not people, where departments have an extremely large amount of money kind of just sitting. And there's always just been a question, of what you can and cannot do with those funds. I know each department has restrictions and things that prohibit them from moving in particular ways. So I just wanted to kind of get an understanding of the money that you all do have sitting. I think it's like 20 million. The airport's got 100 million. It's a lot of money around. So just wanted to ask, was there like what are your restrictions on how you utilize that money after you appropriate your funds to the general fund? Like what can and can't you do with it? Of course, you opened up the Office of Empowerment, I think, which is awesome.
Right.
Are there, other things and other ways you could, impact also with these, I guess, growing, not only that program, but working with the children in it? Like right now, we have a large, from my perspective, shortage of people who are helping grow children, in our communities. Like everybody kind of throws them out there and expects them to swim or float. And,
Right.
we're not really taking them through, I think, we're not doing as good as we could be doing to really pay attention to these children's futures. So, I think with what you are doing already, coupled with a few other things, we could, continue to see some changes. Just wanted to see, what you can do and what your restrictions are on those funds.
So we have approximately $36 million in reserves. 21 million of that is unrestricted. The rest is, it's in the audit. So these are numbers coming straight from the audit. The other 15 sits in restricted pots for capital and for debt reserves. Having a healthy reserve fund helps us financially in that if we have any future projects, like if we build another garage, having a healthy reserve fund helps us with our credit rating when we go out to get financed. So we're just starting the process for the third time to get reviewed by, is it Standard & Poor's, Michelle? Standard & Poor's, which is a rating company. And our credit has been increased or upgraded twice since I've been treasurer, which is good for if we are being a good, economic development arm with the city, which we have been in the past. If there are any projects that the city wants us to do, then, we're in a good financial position to do so. And that's what having a healthy reserve does. Same thing for the airport. They have a reserve fund of almost $130 million. So things happen at the airport that require them to fix, it's a huge place. And they have a lot of capital assets, as do we. I'm
That would
sorry.
save money.
Yeah, and so when you have a healthy reserve position, you pay less to go finance new projects. So case in point, the Scottrade bonds. The interest rate is gonna be so high, and that's why it's, the total cost is $105 million. If the city had a better credit rating, they would save, tens of millions of dollars on that, if they had a better credit rating. So, that's one of the things that having a healthy reserve does. And so, as far as, what we can spend that money on. You know, I've said it several times. I've always been open to conversations. We've been everything that we've spent money on. We've been approached by the mayor and the previous administration to give $2 million to upgrade the MetroLink study, which connects people to jobs, right? If we have more options for public transit. And we decided that funding that we would do what's called transportation development districts or transportation orient development. That's how, because it's transportation related, parking is transportation related. So we decided to do that in partnership with East West Gateway in order to fund that study, because it puts us back in the pipeline for more federal funds to build more public transit in the city, to build more MetroLink lines. And like I said, I'm always open to ideas, but you know, my mother always says you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. So, you know, I'm open.
So it's not, it doesn't have to be directly related to parking.
We prefer that is at least indirectly related to parking, because when we did when we funded the MetroLink study, we had to get an opinion from our bond attorneys, and also our auditors in order to say to get permission that this was allowable spending. And then we also didn't want it to interfere with the annual transfer to the city's general fund. So, and a side note there, since I've been treasurer, we have tripled the amount that we give annually to the general revenue fund. It was $500,000 a year, and under my administration, it's gone up to $1.6 million.
And I just think I like the Office of Empowerment. I think it'd just be nice to have. And
We'd
as a
like to do
collective,
more.
To do more as a city as a whole. With,
Yeah.
You know, those funds that are city. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Could I,
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
when she
Alderman-
gets the.
We'll go to Alderwoman Middlebrook first and back.
Yeah.
This is I don't need seniority.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Chairman, let's go to Alderwoman Middlebrook, then we'll come back to you.
No, I have no questions.
Okay, there you go, that was quick.
That was bad. I came up with something, but you go ahead.
No.
No, go ahead, Alderwoman
sure?
Boyd.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you sure. Okay, the only, I'm glad that Alderman Bosley asked that question. Treasurer, the only issue is that I have is the empowerment is the best kept secret in the city. And I have said that to you personally, and I said it to Connie Johnson. And it's because of what Alderman Boyd is asking. I feel that that office can help our wards tremendously. And I just think it's the education piece. But I guess my question is, how do you all look to enhance that office to help? Because I'm like him, I'm hearing all these dollars, but I mean, let's just keep it real. North St. Louis not getting none of these dollars. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do we benefit from those dollars?
So we have classes in North St. Louis. We just did one at O'Fallon Y.
They
But
don't come to there.
it was packed with 50 seniors.
No, they don't come. But see, the issue is, and I don't know about Alderman Biles, in 27 Board, it's a territorial thing. And those people, everybody keeps telling me, oh, at O'Fallon, they're not utilizing that. The people over there are not utilizing that. So that's why I'm trying to work some things so to market what you have into the ward, to let people know, even the businesses, this is what's available to you, because they're just not going to utilize it. The
Right.
people that's in O'Fallon probably are from the 21st Ward, and there might be some from the 3rd Ward. But the 27, I know if it is, it's very few.
Right.
And I don't know if the 2nd even benefits from it, because Alderwoman Middlebrook and myself are looking at where we can have a central piece for those 2 wards to benefit. So that's why I'm just trying to figure out, how would we benefit from that?
Well, the Also, with the Children's Savings Program,
Okay.
Walbridge is one of our highest schools in participation in that program.
Okay.
And we also, so it's a high-touch program. Our coordinator just doesn't sit in the office all day. She goes out into the schools and meets with the parents and meets with the teachers to let them know how they can use the accounts as tools, as learning tools in their classroom throughout the year. We go to parent-teacher conferences, school activities where there's like some sort of school program. We try to make sure that they see us as much as possible in the schools.
Okay.
And then as we are in the schools, that's where we get access to the parents as
Right,
well.
right.
So like I said, we're in Nance, we're in Herzog, and we're in Walbridge. And Walbridge is one of our highest participation schools.
So have you all reached out to Northwest? You know if you all are in that school?
We're not, well, because when I talk about those three schools, they have K through
six.
second, or through second, right? And our college kids program currently only goes up to the second grade.
Okay.
But for high schools, for middle and high schools, we're putting together some programs where we want to give a copy of the credit report for every senior graduating from high school, because oftentimes, and it's no fault of their own, mom or dad may put utilities in their
Right.
name or phone or something,
Right.
and then they have something bad on their credit when they graduate from high school. So we want to start that process early of credit counseling so they can clear up and have a clean slate
Okay.
when they graduate from high school.
Okay.
And then also warn them of the dangers of predatory lending and
Right.
credit cards and all that. So we're working with Wells Fargo to do that, as well as Operation Hope, which is our partner in, I'm sorry, Connie.
I want to plug Bank of America.
Yeah, and Bank of
Okay.
America. Yeah.
So could you all let me know when you approach Northwest?
Right, and then
So I'm
also,
trying to hold
if
on to
you
that
find out
school.
about different things that we need to know about, that we need to be present about, we're open. We will come anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we will, like, Alderman Boyd, we, down in the treasurer's office, we do a lot of child support garnishments. And
Yeah.
because of the volume and the large amount of questions regarding child support, particularly with our African-American male employees, we contacted the Division of Family Services in Jefferson City. And we asked the director to come here and explain that process.
And he'd be willing to continue to come.
And he's
Okay.
coming,
Yeah.
he's
Okay.
coming in February.
Okay.
And if you find that it's better for us to come and maybe to a 27th ward meeting, we
Right.
can arrange that as well.
Right,
Okay.
because we're working with
If I,
father support.
guys, if I could just interrupt real quick. So for those who are joining us, I guess on YouTube and whatnot, would you introduce yourself, Connie?
Connie Johnson, Assistant Treasurer.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
And for the record, the Office of Financial Empowerment is down in room 220, which is where I work. So I work closely with the director, and because we only have a few employees, we do partner. And tomorrow at 8 a.m., I'd like to plug, Bank of America is opening up a center on St. Louis Avenue that the Office of Financial Empowerment will be partnering with. We will be having classes there, and they will be having classes in our shop down at 220 to address the very same issues that Alderwoman Boyd and Alderman Bosley have brought up. So
That's right there in the third
right there
ward.
in the
I just heard.
so you are welcome to attend.
Please send me
But we do lots of partnerships because we don't have a lot of people. And that's the only way. Did Regents Bank put out their press release yet?
It should go out this morning.
Okay.
No, we don't want to preempt that.
Okay, but the treasurer makes has made a lot of arrangements and built a lot of relationships with a number of financial institutions that are willing to and able to work with us. So sometimes the ideal comes from them, sometimes the ideal comes from the public, the family, the child support came from city employees who were having large amounts of child support taken from their check. And these men needed some counseling, and we're now trying to partner with Father Support Network to not only help them in terms of what's going on with child support, but any other social activities that exceed our scope. So we try to work, and then that's a major issue.
Thank you, Connie.
No problem.
Alderwoman Boyd, any more questions? All right. Alderman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, on the record, I am supportive of the Office of Financial Empowerment and and the good work that it does. Can we get a copy of the latest annual reports from the office?
Give this to the chairperson?
Certainly. Yeah, and so I guess for everybody's, so they know what's going on here, there were a number of requests made, I guess, in the letter from January 9th from the Board of Aldermen to the Treasurer's Office requesting, I guess, the annual reports for the Office of Financial Empowerment for the last 3 years, policies and procedures governing the functions of the parking division, and a personnel roster including name, position, and salary of employees of the Treasurer's Office. Is that what we've got here, Jared?
Correct.
Okay.
Subject to the letter that we sent on, I believe.
Understood.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that a couple days later. All right. Chairman, go ahead.
Okay, let's go back and talk about the role of the Parking Commission. Just for the record, Madam Treasurer, can you tell us who all the members of the Parking Commission are?
I'd like to remind the committee that we are in an active lawsuit right now, and Alderman Boyd has decided to join that lawsuit. I've been instructed by counsel that I cannot answer any of those questions, and we asked Alderman Boyd to recuse himself from this committee and received no response. So that will be the answer to any questions from Alderman Boyd related to the lawsuit.
Mr. Chairman, that is the most absurd response. The fact is, we're sitting here with state statutes.
Right.
The fact is, we're a legislative body. The fact is, the treasurer is required to answer questions of this committee, period. There's no question I'm asking that is relevant to any discovery within a lawsuit. And please, again, have her identify her lawyer and from where he works, please.
Mr. Hahn, would you please identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, Matthew Hans. I'm at the Polsonelli Law Firm.
Thank
Represent the Office of the Treasurer.
All right. Well, I mean, the treasurer's here voluntarily today, so I mean, I guess she can answer what we ask her or decline to answer. And I mean, I think that's one of the things we're discussing here with Resolution 188 is, compelling testimony in the future or document production.
Oh, so let me ask you this, Madam Treasurer. So is the issue that because I'm part of the lawsuit that you don't want to answer questions? If I gave my question to Alderwoman Boyd to ask, would you be willing to answer the question?
I have been instructed not to answer questions that are related to the active litigation which you have joined, Alderman Boyd. Some of the questions are related to the lawsuit, and it's akin to compelling testimony as well as discovery for the lawsuit. So,
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, you are a lawyer, is that correct?
I am, last I checked.
So, let me ask you this. There's a judicial process, and I'm not a lawyer,
Yeah.
but I understand the mechanics of the system. So there's a judicial process, right?
I mean,
And,
yes,
and,
there's,
and within the judicial process, there's this legal process that's called discovery, correct?
correct.
Discovery of facts as pertaining to the lawsuit, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so we are a legislative body, correct?
Last I checked.
And so, does a legislative body do anything like discovery in the terms of the judicial process? Or do we just ask questions relative to our powers given to us by the charter?
No, I mean, we have an oversight function under the charter. But I mean, there obviously is active litigation, and I don't really want to get in the middle of that. But I mean, I have some questions that I'm happy to ask if the treasurer's unwilling to answer questions.
Right, my point is, there's not a question that I can ask that would not be interpreted as potential discovery. And what I'm viewing this as is just an unwillingness to respond to questions that I have as a person, which I'm taking offense to. Because any member of this committee, I can write down 10 questions, and chances are the treasurer will probably answer those particular questions. The Office of Financial Empowerment, for example, there were questions asked about the Office of Financial Empowerment. That's part of the lawsuit. Now, I'm not part of that piece of the lawsuit, but it was part of the lawsuit, and the treasurer was willing to answer those particular questions. So I'm a little confused as to why she's been told that she can't answer questions from me.
And I can't speak to that. I'll let the treasurer or her counsel provide an explanation if they so choose.
Okay. You want to enlighten us and help us understand? Because the city councilor's office don't see a problem with questions being answered based on the litigation.
Well, the city councilor is an attorney, but they are not the attorney representing the treasurer's office. Posanelli via Matt Hines represents the treasurer's office, and I'd also like to remind the committee that you are seeking legal fees and expenses with the litigation, therefore you have a conflict of interest. And this hearing could be an opportunity for you to advance the lawsuit. And, you know, the statements that I make here could also be used in the lawsuit. So, you know, I am here. I don't want to hide from this committee. I'm not here to you know, put up any walls or defenses. But, you know, we want to, like I said at the beginning, I want to attempt to answer as many questions as I can. But when it gets into the parts that are a part of the active litigation, I'm sorry, I have to not answer those questions.
So let me ask you this. So you don't think that telling the committee who the members of the parking commission is based on state statute is a reasonable request from me?
There are 5 members of the parking commission, which are Alderman Boyd, who is in an active lawsuit against the treasurer's office, the director of streets, who has also joined the lawsuit against the treasurer's office, myself, the director of parking, our parking supervisor, as well as the comptroller.
Okay. And can you tell us who has oversight of the parking division?
The chair of the parking commission, as well as the parking supervisor per state statute, has oversight of the parking commission.
Okay, let me read to you from state statute. The treasurer of any city not within the county shall be the parking supervisor, also known as the supervisor of parking meters, for any parking facility or space known in whole or in part leased or managed by the city division and by virtue of his office, shall be subject to the oversight and authorized funding in whole or in part by the parking commission. So would you agree that the parking commission as a body is the oversight for the parking division?
You're asking me to interpret law, and that is also a part of the active litigation, so I cannot answer that question.
I'm not asking you to interpret law. I'm just asking you, I mean, that's just what the state statute says. I mean, there's not too much interpretation to go with that. It clearly says the parking commission, but that's okay. Let me ask you some follow-up questions to some questions that you've already answered, so maybe that will be a little easier. So you talked about $200,000 is what initially given to the city. Is there a formula for that, or is that just an arbitrary number that's been used over the years?
Michelle, where?
That is the down payment that has traditionally been done each year, knowing that we will always be over that amount based on our historical giving structure.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, can you ask Ms. Smart just to identify herself for the record?
Yes, mostly Ms. Johnson, would you mind?
Yes, my name is Michelle Smart and I'm the Chief
And
Fiscal Officer.
you kind of have to come up here because the microphones, they can't hear you.
My name is Michelle Smart and I'm the Chief Fiscal Officer for the Treasurer's Office Parking Division.
Okay, so Ms. Smart, let me ask you this. Where did the $200,000 number, why not $500,000?
As I said, that's what has.
They can't
been-
hear you.
That is what has been.
Ms. Smart, you can go ahead and sit there next to Ms. Middlebrooke there, that's fine.
Or just move it around there, that's fine.
That is what has been historically shown as the down payment in all the records that I have seen. when I came into the office, looking to see what the historical trend has been in the terms of giving that 40%. And so we have continued with that tradition.
Okay, and not that I have anything wrong with it, I'm just kind of curious, because the parking commission say we'll do 500,000, and would that be a problem?
That would have to be something that would be consulted and voted on, I'm sure, through the parking commission.
Okay, and Madam Treasurer, you had talked about the budget has to be approved by April. Is that a policy of the parking division, or where's that come from?
That's another one of those things that historically we have approved the budget by April in order to allow time to get the board bill filed and passed before the board finishes up its business in June.
Okay, are there any written policies, like a policy manual within the parking division that talks about, so we have those?
I think that's been turned over to us, Chairman.
Okay.
In this stack here.
Okay, you talked about the reserve funds, and the higher the reserve fund, the better our credit rating, and the smaller the risk, makes it easier to get loans. Can you tell me what the current credit rating is?
It's a double A,
Double A, yes.
And what's the highest?
triple A.
Okay. And are there any planned projects coming up within the parking division of building maybe any garages or major projects or parking lots or anything like that?
We haven't been approached. Recently, there are, a couple of projects that have, that are in discussion, but there's nothing concrete.
Okay. You brought up the Scottrade deal, and that you were approached about the Scottrade deal, and you wanted to help. Is it too late? Because you had mentioned that the city is going to have to pay more because their credit rating is not as good as the parking commission's credit rating. Is it too late to negotiate the parking commission securing that bond versus the city of St. Louis?
I have not been approached about Scottrade.
You said earlier that you had.
I have not been approached recently about Scottrade.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Chairman. All right. If we could just talk about some basic parking division business. I know for a couple of months there's been talk about this issue regarding fines and the doubling of fines at 22 days versus 30 days that you have to file an appeal. And this might be for Jared or you, Madam Treasurer. Have we made any progress on that issue? I know there's a board bill sitting on the informal calendar about this that I think was being held to allow your office to investigate this and maybe come up, promulgate some new rules. Where are we on that subject?
Oh, we're in a bit of a holding pattern on it, but at the same time, based on the legal status of the parking commission, but at the same time, we've advised all of our, we've advised the Violations Bureau to postpone, for anyone who requests a hearing, their fine is postponed until that 30 days.
Okay, so if you request a hearing on the 25th day.
Correct.
Okay, as long as you're before the 30 days, you're not doubling any fines.
Correct.
All right, and you mentioned you're in a holding pattern, and I've heard that the office is on autopilot. I mean, so talk to me about, to the extent you can, the parking commission. I understand there's obviously litigation right now. I don't want to get into the merits of that litigation or the specifics, but ultimately there's a there's an oversight role with this office. We're talking about a lot of money. It's a big office. I think you're doing a fine job running it right now. Revenues are up. You're giving more to the general fund under the existing formula. But where does without any meetings, where is the oversight of the parking division currently? Who's overseeing your office while you're not having parking commission meetings?
I would offer that we're operating under, I would offer two things. One, we're operating under the procedures that have been established and the budget that's been established. We're not deviating from that. And then two, we're hopeful to get clarity on the legal, on litigation to allow us to kind of proceed. I wish I could provide a timetable, but we're hoping to get some sort of clarity sooner rather than later that will allow us to get back to business. But in the interim, we're operating under the current policies and procedures and the current budget without deviation.
Okay, so, and the last parking commission meeting was in June, is that correct?
I believe.
June, okay. And I mean, we do have a board bill, I guess, that's now codified in ordinance, requiring monthly parking commission meetings. Do you have any intention of having monthly parking commission meetings during the pendency of this lawsuit?
As I stated before, we've been advised by council to suspend parking commission meetings until we get some legal clarity on this issue.
Okay, and given the complexity of this lawsuit and the issues at hand, I mean, what if this is not resolved by April, which very well, it's very possible it won't be, and we get into the next budget year? What's the plan then?
We haven't formulated a plan. Hopefully we'll have more legal clarity at that time. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but intervening events will probably dictate when the parking commission resumes meeting.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. Okay, so doubling of fines, sounds like that's on hold, but you're not, in practice, you're not doubling fines if people request a hearing before 30 days.
Correct.
Okay. Jared, it's been a while, but I know we talked in the past about permit parking zones, and I know you guys were maybe exploring some updates in technology. Has anything happened on that front? It's been a while since we talked about it, but
Sure.
since I'm here today, I figured I'd ask.
We can revisit that with the parking app.
Okay.
There's some opportunities with Park Mobile to use some of the efficiencies that come with the app for parking permit zones. So it's something that we can further discuss with the developer if that's something you or any other alderperson is interested in to get more information about that process.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that.
Sure.
More for neighborhoods, not
Sure.
not for any specific development,
Sure.
but just for some smaller neighborhoods where, we have some parking issues, and they're near large entertainment districts that people are visiting. Okay, I think there was also kicking around an issue regarding, when cars are getting booted or towed for outstanding parking tickets, you've gotta go to your office to pay, then to the tow yard up on Hall Street to get your car. There was some discussion, I don't remember if that was in committee or where, about streamlining that process and having people be able to pay on Hall Street when they're picking up their car. Have we made any progress on that?
I'll have to check with Carl and then get back with the committee. I know that we've reached out to other vendors with solutions that have been prohibitively expensive. So we'll come back, or I'll follow up with where we are on that.
Okay. Kind of touched on, I appreciate you sending these documents over. We'll take a look at these and get copies to members of the committee. And look, from an oversight perspective, not having the monthly parking commission meetings, even with the pending lawsuit, I find a bit troubling. So, I mean, unless they're gonna start doing monthly meetings, I anticipate we're gonna have streets committee meetings monthly and ask folks from the treasurer's office to come in, because there's, in my opinion, there's gotta be some oversight, and this goes for all departments of city government. And until this lawsuit's resolved, I'm gonna look at it as the purview of this committee to sort of just keep some basic oversight, that's the parking division and the treasurer's office. So I guess we'll maybe come back on a monthly basis and obviously give plenty of notice and work with your schedule. And I'm not saying you've got to be here every month. We'll work that out. I think maybe staff can handle some of this. But until we get this lawsuit resolved. So with that,
I'd
Yes.
also offer, we've been working with a number of offices to deal with some of the panhandling and homelessness issues that's around City Hall lot. So there will be a part-time security person that starts this afternoon on a very short-term basis within our budget to help deal with this issue. Human Services is also working with us on this issue because we realize security alone won't address some of the panhandling issues. So they're going to be working with us to hopefully mitigate and help some of the people that are coming up to both visitors and City Hall staff people. So if I'll send something to the Board of Aldermen clerk with more information on that, but that
Okay.
should be starting today.
And who's providing that security?
Our office.
Your
is,
office.
We've hired
got
a
it.
contractor because the city marshals actually claim they don't have jurisdiction to deal with the issue. So in the interim, people have been advised to call the police. So
Okay.
it's not it wasn't
Well,
sustainable.
I appreciate your efforts there, and I know Gerard, for our financial advisor here at the board, has been working with you guys on that. Thank you, because obviously we want to make sure we're keeping visitors and employees coming to City Hall safe, and, you know, people shouldn't be getting accosted at their cars, regardless of where they park. Yes, Mr.
I
Chairman.
have some follow-up questions.
Okay, I guess I'll go back to Alderman Boyd. He's got a couple more questions.
Okay. Madam Treasurer, basically what I heard said was that because of the lawsuit that you guys are not going to adhere to any local ordinances that are passed relative to the parking commission. Is that what I heard?
You're asking me to interpret again. That's also related to the lawsuits.
Okay, let me ask you a different way. So what I heard you say, or I heard Jared say, was when the question was asked about monthly meetings. So there's an ordinance, there's a law, there's a city ordinance that says there must be monthly parking commission meetings. And the response was that we're not having any until a lawsuit is settled. So are you willfully going to violate, you want to continue violating the local law? Is that what I'm hearing? It's at the advice of your counsel now, because that's what you said. Your counsel advised you guys not to have any meetings. Is that correct?
The only reason why we're not having meetings is because you are a litigant in a lawsuit against the constitutionality of the parking commission. So you sit on the parking commission, but you're also suing the parking commission. So we have to make sure that we settle this before we continue having any meetings.
So you're saying you've been advised by your counsel to violate the law?
What?
It's a simple question.
I'm not going to answer questions about my attorney's advice.
But you made a statement about your attorney's advice. You brought it up, I didn't. So were you untruthful?
Alderman Boyd, I'm going to remind you again that you are a litigant in an active lawsuit.
You don't have to remind me, Madam Treasurer. I already know that, and you've said it 50 times. So you don't have to. We don't have to keep going there.
Right.
I just want to make sure it's clear that you feel that it's okay to violate our local laws, and the lawsuit has nothing to do with Ordinance Board Bill 92. So there's no litigation about Board Bill 92. So unless you have an injunction against it, you are in violation. And that's a simple interpretation, like running a red light. If you run a red light, you're in violation of a traffic law. If the local ordinance says that you have to meet monthly and you don't and refuse, you're in violation of the ordinance. Would that make sense?
But the lawsuit that you are in has also challenged the local law related to the parking commission.
However, there has not been a ruling on that. Therefore, we must govern ourselves accordingly. Okay?
And I am governing myself according to the advice of my
But
attorneys.
so your attorney is telling you to willfully. Matter of fact, what's your name again, sir?
Matthew Hunt.
Mr. Matthew Hunt. So you're the attorney. You're giving the legal advice, correct?
Mr. Coder, Alderman Coder.
Yes.
I'm not permitted under the rules of ethics to respond to Mr. Boyd.
I agree.
Because he's a represented party. If he has questions
He's gotta go
for
through
me
his
about the
counsel.
lawyer,
I would agree with
he would
your
go through Mr.
analysis
Kissner.
there.
Thank you.
I think we're
Wait a
gonna
minute. Let me ask you this. So, can I ask you to ask him if he would be advising her to violate the law?
I'm not going to get into that discussion with counsel for the
Okay.
Treasurer's Office, Chairman. What I think we're going to do is a good segue in light of what we've heard today, you know, in the lack of oversight due to the lack of parking commission meetings. I think that's a perfect segue into discussing resolution and hopefully passing resolution 188. which will allow this committee to compel documents and members of the Parking Commission staff to come back in front of this committee in the future, if we need to have oversight. So what I'd like to do now is,
Alderman Coder?
Yes.
I'm sorry. We have received several requests for documents and we never say no. So I don't think that a subpoena is necessary to compel documentation. As a matter of fact, we have a list of all of the times we've been requested for documents since May 11th of 2017, and we've provided it every single time. I'm not saying that I don't think that it should be passed, but we're not trying to hide. But we are recognizing that there is active litigation. But if you have any requests for documents, as we received a letter last week and we requested all of the documents that you asked for. So, I'm just saying that we don't have anything to hide.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your cooperation with document requests thus far. And so with that, I guess, I don't know, any further questions for the treasurer from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Madam Treasurer, Mr. Hahn. Chairman, would you like to close on Board Bill 188? Resolution 188?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, this resolution was voted and passed out of the Board of Aldermen on.
Oh, this was already, so we didn't
Yeah.
have to pass this out of committee?
Right.
Oh, okay, we're
It's
just discussing it.
Right.
Oh, all right. My
The merits
apologies.
of it. So
Yeah.
I like to just kind of hold it in committee and
Got it.
we may,
Right, my apology, we already passed this resolution as a whole body. Okay, all right, well, with that, I mean, I'm interested in hearing from members of the committee based on the testimony we've heard today. I mean, I certainly believe there's gotta be some oversight of the parking division and the office, and if the parking commission's not gonna meet, I think it's incumbent upon us to
Use this committee.
use this committee to provide that oversight.
And I like to say this, Mr. Chairman, and I will get a legal opinion from the city council's office. I've gotten a verbal opinion, but it's very clear. Board Bill 92 is law. The ordinance requiring the parking commission to meet monthly is the law. To not meet monthly is a violation of the law. There is no injunction in place. There is nothing challenging. Now, it is true. I'm part of a lawsuit that challenged the whole system. It's about challenging the whole system, not just challenging whether they're gonna meet. I mean, that's just kind of absurd. Unless there's an injunction, unless there's a ruling, our law is the law of the land. And I am kind of disappointed that legal counsel had advised the treasurer that she can basically willfully violate the law. No one is above our local laws. No one. And it's very troubling. And I just find that as a way out of not having to answer any questions, and it's very unfortunate. So I just want to make that clear. It is the law.
And Chairman, is there, and if I remember correctly, Board Bill 92, doesn't it provide a mechanism for other members of the Parking Commission to call meetings?
That's correct. And
Has that been tried? Have you tried
It
that?
has been, and I didn't get a chance to, that was the follow-up question I wanted to ask the treasurer, because there was a meeting in October.
Okay.
In the meeting in October, the parking commission, the body that was present was myself, a representative from for the comptroller, and the director of streets, Wilson, Mr. Wilson. And we voted that no fines shall be doubled, period, until after 30 days, regardless of an appeal process. So what the treasurer, what our chief of staff said was, we put it on hold. If they ask for a hearing, then we don't. That's what they've been doing anyway. I mean, there's no change in how they've been doing business. So obviously, they're not interested in what the parking commission as a body under Board Bill 92 came together and did. And maybe we should call the treasurer back in next week and ask her about that, since she got away today without being able to respond to that.
All right, well, we can.
If you like to, sure.
I think we'll probably, we can say, let's save that for next week.
Okay,
Or the
that's
weekend.
fine.
All right. Without any other further business here, members of the committee, with that, we are adjourned.
All right.